Well, hello everyone. I'm Stephen Shilton and I'm the Careers Manager for the College of Science and Engineering at the university. And I'm delighted to be joined by Jannicke Ianssen, who is the Employer Branding Manager for Nordic Semiconductors in Trondheim in Norway. So we're going to have a chat about Nordic, what they're about, how you can maximise your chances of being recruited by a company like them, and what the benefits could be of an internship or a graduate job in the UK or abroad. And Nordic have a fantastic story, which I've been looking into, but I'll let Jannicke tell you all about that. So welcome to University of Glasgow, Jannicke.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me.
That's all right, great. So tell me about Nordic Semiconductors. Where are you based? What do you do? What's your story?
Where do I start? I mean, Nordic is, it's one of the coolest companies, so there's so much to tell, but we're a Norwegian startup company. We started back in '83 in Trondheim, and we still have our headquarters in Trondheim, and we're actually the market leader within Bluetooth low energy, and that's kind of cool because Trondheim is not that big of a city, so actually being a company in Trondheim having a global market leader role is kind of cool and special. But today we're growing into quite a large international corporation. Not large if you look at international measures, but for us, as we started with 4 entrepreneurs, we're now just past 1,000 employees, and I think we're in more than 22 countries now. So we're getting big, which is kind of cool. And our technology is all over. So we're very proud of what we produce, but we're actually most proud of our employees because we kind of we innovate things. So we are fully 100% dependent on our employees.
Interesting. It's a huge expansion. It's a fantastic story over the last nearly 40 years now. You've grown from a startup right through to a massive multinational company, 22 countries. That's really impressive.
Yeah.
But this past year's been very difficult, hasn't it, with the pandemic? So how has COVID affected your recruitment in general and from Scotland in particular, would you say?
I mean, it's, I think we gotta say is the fact that we're here about 1.5 years after this started and we're still in it. I think that's as much of a surprise for us as any other company or university. So obviously it's been a different journey. But one of the things that we were very proud of last year and also this year was that we didn't stop our student engagements. We actually managed last year with digital onboarding and also some offices being able to still take on physical presence from students and graduates. So we actually managed to keep the recruitment levels. It's been different. I mean, the norm now is doing digital interviews. That wasn't before. And I would say that it's important for us because recruiting students for student engagements, internships, and also graduates is an important part of actually growing our employee base. So yes, it has affected us, no doubt about it. And I think one of the things that we're really sad about is that we're not able to see any students anymore. And it's hard to know how to engage with students because we see that doing digital events, digital career fairs, it doesn't have the same effects as in meeting people in person. We just have to admit that. But if you measure that up against doing nothing, it's of course better to do it digitally, but it doesn't give us the same. So I don't know if I answered your question, but it has affected us in a great deal, but still we have progress as planned.
I mean, I think that's great because we know that, we've really enjoyed having having Nordic at our fairs. It's been really interesting. I've really enjoyed chatting to your representatives and the students. I've really, enjoyed meeting you as well. It's been really impressive and it's been great. And person-to-person fairs, I think are, people like that. You can meet somebody, meet them face to face. And obviously, it's just impossible to do that it's been impossible to do that during the pandemic. So rather than, coming and seeing even somebody with a mask on. It's better to see them like we're speaking just now. At least we can see each other.
Yeah.
But it's great that you've met your targets, and you've managed to get the people that you need to keep the growth in Nordic going. So that's fantastic. I'm just wondering, as well as the pandemic, another big issue for us has been the UK leaving the EU. How has that affected your recruitment in general, and again from Scotland in particular? Have you found that's more tricky, or?
Yeah, it is tricky because we have built a good relationship with interns from the UK, and we see that that's not as easy anymore. Obviously, we're hoping that we will get systems in place down the line that can actually ease up and make us able to easily accept and integrate students from the UK. So I think that is definitely on our wish list, because we, I think for the last 3 or 4 years now, we have had great success in recruiting both interns, but also permanent employees after finishing the studies from Glasgow. So obviously we do want to continue with that, but it is a challenge for sure.
Yeah. And I know this is a bit of a cheeky question, and what do you think, is there anything that makes students from Glasgow or interns from Glasgow or Scotland stand out at all? Is there anything that you would say about that? Is there anything that makes them special or different? Or?
I would say the engagement. And that's one of the things that are very important to us. I think that's, I got to be a bit careful here, but maybe engineers are not the best ones in selling themselves. They're a bit, careful about talking about what they know. And I think also there, we've seen that the students from Glasgow, they shine in some way. And that engagement, that seeing that drive or that motivation is very important, because with motivation, you can achieve anything. And I think that's one of the factors that we have seen. And also the fact that we have had interns that we have recruited. And that's a good sign that they come up with relevant knowledge and actually do perform very, very well. And that's also important. We have, how can I say, high competency standards internally. We work with, and I can't even explain it because it's so small and so technical that working in HR, it's kind of hard both to understand and explain what we work with. But for those who do actually perform well and are interested in the little microchips that we make, I mean, we're the perfect match.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So what you've said really is that, there are certain aspects, you like motivated students, and students from Scotland have been motivated and really interested in this. You could call it a niche area. It's not within engineering necessarily, but it is certainly a niche area in terms of the global economy. That's great. But what I'm interested in is the changes that the EU, UK leaving Brexit, but also the changes to the whole virtual environment. What do you think? Do you think that's going to continue? What changes do you think this will make to your recruitment in the future?
I think I've been dwelling on that question for a while, because as I started off saying, that none of us would have thought 1.5 years back that we would still be here. And I think that there's no chance that this hasn't forced a development and affected the way we work. I think both in positive ways, but also in challenging ways. We've seen a shift that before we thought that we needed to travel. Now we realize that maybe not so much. But at the same time, we also see that actually meeting somebody in person strengthens relationships. So I think there's a part of us that are actually learned and developed that we can use digital tools more than we did before. But at the same time, I think as a company, we also we like to have people in the office. that's a part of our strategy. We invent technology, which means that our livelihood is made on that 2 + 2 = 5.
Yeah.
And we know that that innovation and that creativity also happens when people are together.
Yeah.
And digital is not a replacement for being together.
Yeah.
But it means that we can be more flexible, and that we can work closer also. We're having 22 offices around the world. Being used to being on video, for example, makes it easier, because before it was sort of, you didn't always use the video button. It's like, it's a bit uncomfortable. Now it's like, I can't see you. That's sort of the first thing you say. So something has happened, and I think it's positive, but I also think that even though we have progressed, I think that we as a company, we're longing to see people in the office. We're longing to be chatting by the coffee machine, and we want to bring that back. We don't want to bring, how can I say, we don't like, in that sense, the new, what do we call it, the new ways of working. It's a bit of both. And maybe I'm taking a left turn from your question here, but
no, not at all. I think it's interesting because that whole, I think the whole move to digital has been forced upon us, and I think there are disadvantages to that because we can't be with people. And you're right, the innovation is more difficult if you can't meet by the water cooler. But by the same token, the move to digital does make you more flexible, and particularly in recruitment, because you don't have to fly somebody to Trondheim to interview them, or you can do a lot online. And I suppose that leads really well on to my next question, which is, how can a student, you think, stand out in this more virtual recruitment landscape, if you like? How can they stand out and make themselves impressive?
I think it's, I think for some it can actually be easier, because also being on the screen rather than being in person can be also that you get a bit more distance, which for somebody can be actually comforting and make somebody more comfortable. Because we know that it's easier for people, for example, who are very outgoing. It's easier to meet somebody in person, take the room, shake the hand, be strong. Whereas it's on a camera, maybe it's a more even playing field, which also for those who are maybe not that extroverted, it's easier to come across. You're in your own space, you're comfortable. So in that sense, I think it's that can also be exploited by students, and also you can more easily rehearse because I'm actually going to be seated here. While as when you walk into a room, it can you can feel more intimidated because you don't know what you're walking into. I'm shaking with my coffee, So I think it's on the one hand, it's positive. I would say, and also, even though you might see many people on the screen, it doesn't feel like that many people, because also sometimes what we do as companies is that we have 2 or 3 people in an interview, and that can be really hard, especially on students. And if you're not the outgoing type, that can be a bit stressful. But on the screen, it's you can actually choose what you see also. You don't have to have everybody big popping out on you. You can actually focus on yourself or be a bit more selective. So, yeah, there are positive effects for sure.
So you think that, so what you're really saying, I think, is that for people that maybe aren't sort of naturally extroverted and would be really comfortable meeting new people in a big office or somewhere different, that online you're in your own environment, and maybe it's easier to just start to talk about what you've been doing, what your engineering projects have been about, all of that, and it's maybe easier, which is interesting. And I think that's true. I think we've seen that in our work with students. That for some it does suit them more in this virtual environment, and that's fine. So that's great.
Yeah, and also I think it's sometimes more straight to the point when you're on the screen. While when you meet someone in person, it's more time and chit chat. And we know that people who are not that socially comfortable are less comfortable with chit chat and more comfortable when you actually steer into the topic.
Yep.
At least my experience is that when we do start meetings now, it's more straight to it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you maybe ask, how are you? And then you go into the topic. And I think that's also maybe a good factor. That's because talking about what you know, which is probably yourself, your experience, is a lot easier than talking about the weather for some.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to do that an awful lot in Scotland.
Yeah.
I'm sure the weather in Norway is, well, I don't know if it's really that much different, but
no, it's not.
Okay. One of the things, obviously, you're in Trondheim right now as we're speaking, I think. That's correct, yes. Isn't it? Yeah. So that's different. So we're having a chat and working together virtually the way we wouldn't have done that. I don't think in the past we couldn't have done something like this. So there are benefits to that. And I'm just thinking, students thinking of coming to Trondheim and doing an internship, why do you think students should think about working overseas? How do you think it would benefit them?
I think working overseas is very beneficial for students these days. Coming from a small country like Norway, I would say for having or building an international career, or when you graduate, it is actually expected that you have done an internship or that you have been abroad, that you do have more international experience. It's actually expected these days. And I think it's one of the things is, of course, that you move to a different country, you learn to be more independent and that part, but also the interactions with people from other cultures. I think in our office in Trondheim, we actually have 43 nationalities.
Wow.
And that's really, really cool.
43, that's impressive.
Yeah, but that also, of course, it enriches an environment. But it also, how can I say, it's also challenging because we're a cultural mix. And then going abroad as a student and experiencing a cultural mix, a different culture from your own, learning to cooperate with people who don't think like you, who don't have the same background as you, I think is extremely important, because also what we see today is being an international company, whether you work from Trondheim or you work from our Hong Kong office, we need to interact to understand. And coming out as a graduate with that international experience, the understanding of what does it mean for a company handling local versus central versus international, how does it affect the way we do business, the way we develop our technology? I think that is a very good background for students to come out with. And of course, going to Trondheim, I mean, could it be better?
No, not at all. So that's great for the students. How do you think it benefits the employing company to have people from abroad?
For us, it's, I would say it's vital. We are an international company. We hire based on skill sets. And as I said, having 43 nationalities, the world is our recruiting ground. And having students come from different universities also brings in different competence, new competence into our project, our products, because also what we have been very good on is that students come in and actually contribute in our projects, in our products. They don't come in and sit and do side work or supporting work. They actually come in real projects because we want them to build real experience that they can take away. And for us also, that means that we get fresh knowledge just out of school into our projects. And then having students from Glasgow, from NTNU in Trondheim, and from other European universities also strengthens the knowledge that we see in our projects. So I think it's very important, and also from the cultural aspects, it's always how can I say, it's always good to have also an age mix because we're whether we like it or not. I haven't been with the company for that long, but we have many employees who's been there for years, and we're getting older. It's a fact. So having also. Yeah, having the, how can I say, the young enthusiasm also in our project and in our work environment is extremely important.
Yeah, well, I think that's true, and I think that's true right across the board in every walk of life, every area as well. Yeah. That's been great to talk to you, Jannicke, today. Before we finish, do you have any last thoughts for our students? Anything you'd like to say to them?
I think whether you choose to do an internship or apply for a graduate position with us or any other company, I think it's important to find out where do you want to make a difference, where do you want to build your knowledge, and then just trust yourself and go for it. And dare to be a bit bold. It's allowed. I always say to younger people that when you apply for a job or you go to an interview, you don't have to talk about all the things that you don't know. We assume that anyway, and we will find out. But try to focus on what can you bring? What do you know? How can you enrich our company? That's what we want to hear. Bring your engagement, your enthusiasm to any interview or to any employer, because we know that we will build your knowledge. But you do come in as an asset with important knowledge and skill sets for us. So try to focus on that. I think that would be at least a piece of advice, because we want to see it.
Jannicke, that's brilliant. I think I'm going to take that away with me, that phrase, trust yourself and go for it. I think that's fantastic. Well, listen, I'd just like to thank you for your insights, Jannicke, today. I think you've given us some great benefits of working abroad, a great picture of the benefits of working abroad as a graduate or as a student intern. And I think you've been really encouraging and given us a lot of food for thought as well. So I hope that many of you watching today will really start to think maybe about gaining experience and going abroad in the future. So thanks very much for your time, Jannicke. That's been fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. And I can't wait to see your students in our application list.
Okay, thanks very much. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.